Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to this webinar. My name is Byron Noel, and I'll be the organizer for the session. And with me today is Gerrie Botha. I have a short video I'd like to play just before I bring it to browse center.
This Valentine's, what could be more romantic than listening to plumbing-related podcasts in a hot tub? TMP Magazine Podcasts, bringing you interesting and informative conversations about your trade and industry. TMP Magazine Podcasts. Staying informed and being empowered could never be more romanticized, all pun intended. Find our podcasts on TMP Magazine on App Plumber. We know you'll love the content.
That's it from my side. I'd like to hand over to our presenter.
Good morning, Byron, and good morning to all our attendees. Welcome here today. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Steve Brown, who's also in the room for support. Mr. Brown.
Morning, Gerrie. Morning, everyone.
Okay, so let me just share my screen here quickly. Can you all see that?
Yeah, we can see that, Gerrie.
Right. So this morning, the topic is protect yourself. And right at the offset, I'm convinced that most of you has got a couple ideas or a couple of things that you are thinking about. Oopsie, where do I go? There I go. Right. So these might be some of the ideas that came up. Is maybe a firearm or PPE or armed guard or armed, all of these things. There's a couple of topics here that, depending on your activities or whatever your environment is, these might be the things that you first think of when we're talking about protecting ourselves. However, that's not what we're going to talk about today. So the idea is here to give you some guidelines to help you to protect yourself against unfair complaints of clients, being held responsible for items or work outside the scope of work, and also the failure of components and or materials provided by the client or the developer or whoever has provided these components. So we are going to look at the SANS codes and regulations, and a lot of you might think, yes, here we go again. But yeah, unfortunately, it's part of this. The manufacturer installation specifications and warranty and guarantee conditions, assess the existing installation, the non-compliance notice, and also the certificate of compliance. So if we look at the first thing, obviously, the SANS code that we are more familiar with, that we get involved in on a day-to-day basis, obviously the National Building Regulations, SANS 10252 Part 1 and 2, SANS 10254 for the geysers, SANS 10400XA regarding the energy and environmental sustainability, and then on the specialization side, the SANS 10106 and 1352, which is the solar and heat pump installations. And the knowledge and or access to these is crucial when we are looking to protect ourselves, because these regulations are not only written to protect the consumer, but it's also written to protect the plumber. So if you stay within these guides and within these regulations, that's another way to protect yourself, to make sure that everything happens or is being done according to these regulations. Then we also need to obviously understand and know the municipal water services bylaws in the area that we are working in. And you will see I've got a couple here, Ekurhuleni, Western Cape. So for every area where there's operations or construction or things happening, there's water services bylaws that needs to be looked at as well, and we need to abide to these bylaws as well. Obviously, these bylaws are deducted from the SANS codes, and you will see in most instances, the SANS codes, as I mentioned earlier, is also mentioned to say that these installations need to comply with those standards. Now, let's have a look at manufacturer specification and conditions. And yes, just one of those typical examples that we are all familiar with. and it's the serial plate on a geyser. Now, a lot of instances we find as auditors when we do inspections is that a lot of our plumbers do not understand or do not know how to read these. And I think what's important here is if we look at the top one, there's certain things that have been marked, like this, for instance, horizontal and floor mount. Now, in this instance, it's quite obvious that you cannot or should not mount this thing against a wall or vertical for that matter. And if you do that, then the guarantee or warranty will not be honored. So I think it's important that we understand the components that we are working with, as well as the specifications on these units. Another thing that obviously also comes to mind is that what is interesting to me is that most of the geyser units that we install has got a sticker on it, which gives you the warranty conditions as well as a diagram how to install it, and yet it's being done incorrectly. Now, I ask you, how do you protect yourself if you have the picture in front of you and you still do it differently to this, if I can put it that way? And one instance is, as I marked there in red, we often come across geysers that are wall mounted. However, the brackets or the wall plates were not moved. So that geyser is now basically not doing what it's supposed to do, because the hot water outlet is now sitting on the side instead of on top. So it's sometimes very basic things that we miss, that we don't look at, and we're not making sure of, to make sure that we do and we comply to these manufacturers' conditions and specifications. And due to that, we are the reason that the warranties are voided and that there are problems coming up. Another interesting thing, and it's something that has been mentioned in the recent past a number of times, and here are some of the specifications and conditions of one of our manufacturers, and you will see marked it at the bottom in red. It says, in the event of electrical water heater having to be replaced, the customer is responsible for the opening and closing of roof or ceiling should there be insufficient access through the trapdoor. So that's one example. And another manufacturer, again, the same thing. Sufficient access to the water heater for either repairs or replacement is the responsibility of the end user. The manufacturer will not make good or reassemble any ceilings or cupboards. Now, the question immediately arises, do we as plumbers or installers inform our client of this condition? We often hear, but whoever the manufacturer is, there was a warranty claim. They honored the warranty claim, but they just came and they said, okay, here's the geyser, we'll leave the geyser here, but we're not going to install it due to limited access. Now, I think it's important that you as the plumber or the installer inform the client to say, this is one of the conditions. We have got limited access here. And if I just can go to my pictures, this is one example where there's limited access, as you can see. How they got in here, I don't know. I assume it looks like they've removed some of the roof covering. Now, first of all, you as the plumber, you're not a roofing specialist. So be very careful when you get to the situation. And maybe you should engage with the client to say, sir, ma'am, I'm not a roofing specialist. That's the only way that I'm going to get in here. We need to most probably obtain the services of a qualified person to remove the roofing and to put it back. Because if you do it as the plumber, you open yourself up for claims other than whatever you have installed. Another example, yeah, same situation. So please remember to inform the client about that. And how do we do that? How do we inform the client? We often come across the situation where there's a client complaint and the plumber said, but I told the client. Now, telling the client, you cannot prove that. How do you prove you've told the client if you haven't put it in writing. Here's just one example, maybe, or an idea, is to, in your non-compliances on your COC, put in there, due to limited access and in the event of a warranty and or guarantee replacement, the owner or the customer is responsible for providing access to the installation. The manufacturer will not make good or reassemble any roof covering, ceilings or cupboards in the event of a warranty or guarantee replacement. Just an idea. Maybe that's one way of addressing this issue. And now you have proof that I have informed the client, here's the document. So the client cannot come back to say, but you never told me. So I think we need to be more careful when we engage with clients. We need to also tell them what are the conditions that may cause a problem going forward. Steve, I know you've got an idea or two about this as well. Maybe you want to come in here.
Yeah, thanks, Gerrie. I think just to put everybody in the picture, Gerrie and I were having this discussion in November of last year, in terms of how many, not only myself, but Brendan and others in the office, in terms of how many times and the complaints that we receive, when we actually go and we investigate and we look at the photos and everything else, it's very difficult to defend a contractor that hasn't put that detail in. And when you go and have a look at the installation and you see the non-compliances or the risks or whatever, and you go back and you go, but this, as an example, in December, I had one where there was a PRV an isolating valve between the PRV and the inlet of the geyser. So the plumber went and said, okay, great, I'm going to put an expansion relief valve and that will solve the problem. But the geyser's on the cupboard, the expansion relief valve is in that cupboard. There's no allowance for discharge from the expansion relief, so it drips onto the floor. Now, that, again, with no detail of non-compliance or advising the consumer of the risk, the plumber took it upon himself, did it, and he is now in a position where he's got to carry that cost because now the client's got damages to floors and everything else. Another particular example in November is a geyser also in a cupboard where the discharge for the expansion relief and the TP was taken into a PVC pipe. Now, somewhere along the line, somebody broke that PVC pipe that was discharging down 3 floors. So the plumber just left it inside the cupboard, discharging on the floor, which then created damage downstairs, and it's now ceilings and cornices and everything else. And again, a complaint, and you go in there and you look at the non-compliance notice, and it is so vague. In fact, there's maybe 2 lines. One was there's no tray, and the other one was maybe I think it was that the system was unbalanced. And in discussion with the plumber, he says, yes, I know the standards, but how did he protect himself? Because now there's an issue between the insurer, there's an issue between the body corporate, and. So I think for me, if somebody's going to give you a clap, you lift your arms and try and protect yourself. And I think that for us this year is to try, and you're within your rights, and it's there, and it's a requirement in terms of the standards to advise the consumer of any pre-existing non-compliance. And as an example, and when we talk about professionals, 2 weeks ago, I had to go in and have an operation on my knee. And whilst getting wheeled into the operating theatre, I've got an anaesthetist asking me to sign forms of indemnity, and I can't hold anybody responsible. So that was, for me, was an interesting one, that you're going wheeled into a theatre and you're signing your life away. And I think that's where we need to get to, ladies and gents, is that we need to protect ourselves at all times. We know the standards, and we know it's a schlep. Gerrie and I have said this before, we hate paperwork. But unfortunately, it is the nature of the beast in terms of what it is that we do. So as much as, everybody will go, it's Stephen Gerrie hopping again. I think we're drumming it because we still haven't learned how to protect ourselves, how to advise the consumer and apply our rights, because we also have rights. We have a right to do things properly, where the client has a right to to choose what they want, but at the same time, not at our expense. So, Gerrie, I'm ranting. You know me in this subject, and I think it's just to take that time. Just take that 5 minutes and write it down. Like you've got there on that non-compliance notice. Put it out there, get it out there, because we know when something goes wrong and it's through an insurer, a contract, or whatever, the plumber is always wrong. So, ladies and gents, it's about time we started doing things the right way. And some of you are. I mean, I've seen some that are really, really good, where they've covered everything. And I've seen some that cover everything, and everything that doesn't even apply to the job. It's a copy and paste. So just also be careful in terms of how you put it. You can't just list every single non-compliance. As an example of one where it says the piping in the ceiling roof space is not secure. Well, there was no piping in the roof space. So the COC and the non-compliance was actually incorrect. Gerrie, back to you.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah. So talking about COCs, the COC document itself, over and above for the non-compliance, is also a way to cover yourself, to protect yourself. And what are we certifying when we issue a COC? And on the bottom part of that COC, you'll see there, block A says, the above plumbing work was carried out by me or under my supervision, and it complies in all respects to the plumbing regulations, laws, compulsory standards, and local bylaws. So that's what we are saying. When we issue a COC, we say that whatever we have done complies to all of these regulations. And in the section B is obviously a situation where you might have had an installer on site, you weren't there yourself, but you went, and here it says, I have fully inspected and tested the work, stated. So, whenever you have people out in the field, make sure that you have the correct information before you issue the COC. Cover yourself once again. And here it says, I fully certify that the inspected and tested work and the necessary completion work was carried out by me or under my supervision. So again, what it says is that although you haven't done it yourself, it was done under your supervision, and it complies again to the regulations. So in that sense, I urge you to be very, very careful and beware of issuing third-party COCs. This comes to the front quite often where there's an audit or a complaint, and we contact the plumber, and the plumber says, but I haven't done the job. I just issued the COC on behalf of somebody else. Now, I can tell you that, first of all, you are going to be held liable. That person that issued the COC is responsible, irrespective of whoever else has worked on this thing. You cannot now point fingers in another direction. You have certified that you have inspected and tested the work. So how can you now turn around and say, but it's not my responsibility, it's responsibility. So I urge you to be very careful, and I urge you to get all the information, even for your own installers. Make sure that everything has been done correctly, and before you issue the COC, that you are actually stating fact, and not, issuing the COC because it's a document, it's paperwork. I hate paperwork, to get it out of the way. That is 9 times out of 10 the downfall and the problem that you encounter. So let's have a look at, how do I look at my COC, my certificate of compliance? What do I do here? If you look at these descriptions here of the installation details, the only thing that was written there is 200-liter geyser replacement. Now, I don't know whether that's enough. You can make your own decisions regarding that. In the bottom one, it says burst geyser, old geyser number not visible, new serial number, so and so. Again, is that enough information to describe the actual work that you have done? If something goes wrong, and you all know, we've heard this, I think all of us have been in that situation. Since you guys were here, this and this went wrong. Now, if there's a complaint, how do I defend the plumber to say, but this was not done by this plumber. This was previously, it was done before. Or I don't know, because I don't know what this installation actually entails. So it is important that you do a proper description of what you have done. Now, if we look at this, in a lot of instances, the only tick mark on that COC is hot water system where there was a geyser installed. So the question is immediately, is that all you worked on? Did you not touch the cold water system? Did you not look at the PRV? Maybe one should have ticked both. If we look at the description here at the bottom, the installation details, I'll put in here, replace the damaged geyser with a 150 liter quick Ariston Frankie, whatever the manufacturer is, geyser, serial number so and so, installed a new 600 kPa PRV, a 600 kPa TMP valve, vacuum breakers, drain cork, all pipes around the geyser insulated to 1 meter away from the geyser. Now, that I think is a much better description than to just say install the 200 liter geyser. And due to the fact that I've worked on the PRV, I need to now indicate that I've also worked on the cold water system. You can obviously differ with me, but again, this is I think a better way to protect yourself, to describe what have you actually done. In this instance, and it doesn't only stop by geysers. When we talk about COCs, most guys immediately think about a geyser installation. That's not where it stops. We're looking at sanitary ware, for instance, here. Again, the bottom section here, install 2 new hand basins, close couple toilet pan. So this is a proper or a better description of what work was done, and within those parameters, we can then say, okay, this is the work that the plumber has done. So, ma'am, unfortunately, in this instance, this plumber hasn't worked on the PRV, so he cannot be held liable. And tick the correct information. Once again, if we do these things, is it only sanitary ware? Maybe we should have ticked a couple of other things as well. Like, for instance, hot water system, the cold water system. If you replace taps, you most probably worked on that system. Look at the drainage, above ground drainage. How did you connect the traps and all of these waste fittings? So be careful, and please, I implore you, do a proper description of the work that you have completed. What I've also added in here on the bottom one is that install 2 hand wash basin mixers, shower mixer, and a shower hose supplied by the owner. Could not determine whether the items provided are approved or compliant. So we often come across the situation where the client has bought something somewhere and he now gets you in to come and fit this. You don't know whether it's approved. Why would you want to take responsibility for that item if you cannot determine whether it's been an approved product? So in this instance, you will cover yourself to say, these items were provided by the owner. I could not determine whether it was approved, so therefore I cannot be held liable if something goes wrong with that item specifically. So that's one thing that happens a lot, and people do not cover themselves in that instance. So yes, just a couple of things, maybe installation details, just a couple of descriptions, again, going back to those that we've just had a look at. 1 or 2 things that I've added here as install the drainage system in accordance with the rational design by Mr. So-and-so, see attached. So then you would attach a copy of that to cover yourself. Once again, installed hot and cold water supply system in accordance with approved architectural drawings and specifications, attached. So again, now you can refer to a document that you have attached or that you've got available to say, these are the specifications that I worked according to. And once again, you are then covered. Sorry. Another thing is to do a proper assessment of the site before you start working. And we've mentioned that a couple of times. And here's just a couple of pictures of installations on the top left. See, those pipes are not anchored. They're not properly installed. The geyser here, the drip tray, can you see what's happening there? That drip tray is not properly installed. It's obviously going to collect water on the back side. Yeah, the TP valve is piped up upwards as well as reduced. This TP valve discharge is pointing into the drip tray. In this instance, obviously, there's limited space. You cannot even get access to that element if something goes wrong here. And on top of everything, the geyser was mounted using chains. So these are the items that you need to specify. Take photographs, walk around the system. I always tell when I do installers training, I tell the installers, do not touch the installation before you have done a proper inspection. Take photographs and then obviously do your non-compliance notice. In the instance of other things that you might see on site, here's a meter installation. Here's rainwater being discharged directly into the drainage system. This is something that is now happening quite frequently, where these flexible connectors are being used as a trap at the basin or the zinc. And then one of the most famous ones are these vent valves. So it's not limited to a geyser. Look at whatever is around you and once again inform the client. And on that basis, yes, I think step by step what should happen when you get on the site. Take photographs of every angle, look for existing non-compliances, issue the non-compliance notice, notify the owner or the occupant in writing. Then you can conduct the repair installation, take photos once again after, and issue your COC. If you follow the sequence and you stick to this, I'm convinced 9 times out of 10 you would be able to cover yourself, and you would be able to prove what non-compliances were there when you arrived on site. Remember, the obligation and responsibilities is the owner is responsible for the installation to make sure that it's been maintained and installed according to the legislation. However, the plumber, and in all of these regulations, it says that the plumber needs to inform the owner or the occupant in writing of non-compliances. So you do not have an obligation to fix these things out of your own pocket. Your obligation is to inform the client of these issues. Again, here's a COC that was completed. There was no non-compliances listed. And when there was an inspection done, we found there's quite a number. There's 15 of them. So how do you miss this? How do I now, as an auditor or as a person investigating a complaint, how do I help you to get you out of the situation if you have not done the paperwork correctly? Very, very important. Please specify and make sure that you note all of these things. And once again, we know that the plumbers do not like to do paperwork, but unfortunately, if you do not do that, you're not protecting yourself. Once again, non-compliance notice is available on the IOPSA shop. So please use that document. It's a tick box exercise. It's going to take you a couple of minutes and you will cover yourself and the client will sign it and you've got proof of everything. The last thing I just want to mention in terms of construction, we often get plumbers asking, how can IOPSA help me to sort out this problem? Now, here's a course that's been put together. It's free for IOPSA members. And I'm convinced, and I've been part of this for quite some time, is that if you go to this and you do this training, you will understand the construction part of things much better from the inception, from tenders, from right through to contracts, everything. And that's the best way to cover yourself, to protect yourself, is to have the knowledge, to understand what you are dealing with. So I urge you, please enter this, look at this, get involved in this course. This will help you. Even if you're not in construction, it will help you to understand what you need to do and what your rights and your privileges are in the situation. That's me for the moment. So, Byron, I see I'm just on time. Maybe we can see there's a couple of questions. If we can have a look at the questions quickly. I had exact situation with like last week concerning a geyser. No plumber or repair people now do not want to work here. even panel beat refer. So yeah, again, yeah, we're talking about a difficult client where the client might be unreasonable. However, if you have completed your documents properly, then you will have covered yourself. So again, specify what you are doing. Colin saying, yeah, we as plumbers have not created the COC system and do not know we could tick more than one. I'm sorry to hear that, sir, but yeah, it's obviously there. So those tick boxes, you can tick more than one. So again, use the document to your benefit. Laurentius, yeah, again, is there not an easier way to upload pictures? I don't know. Steve, maybe you can assist with that one. I don't know whether there's an easy way to upload pictures or what do we do in that situation? Maybe there's an answer to that. Steve, can you assist us maybe in that one?
Yeah, I think Gerrie, it's going to take a while. So maybe what we'll do is maybe do a further webinar on that particular point. So I think it's a good point that Lawrence raises, and he always raises some points. And I think maybe for you and I to just have a look at it for a session in the next month in terms of, and I think, in closing, because we're running out of time, but I think, the key thing for me is the power of the pen. And we keep saying that is what's going to keep you out of the dwang. And knowledge is power, and you have the knowledge to be able to do this. It takes a little bit of time, but can you imagine? How just take a service call comeback or complaints from homeowners or whatever. How much time does that take? So sometimes it's like it's always said, we've always got the time to do the job correctly the second time. So it's about just focusing, and education, training, power of the pen, and knowledge is power. Thanks, Gerrie.
No. Perfect. Thank you, Steve. So I think that's it from me. Again, in conclusion, protect yourself. Please do your documentation. Take as many photographs as you can. Keep it on record somewhere, and cover yourself. That's the only way that you're going to be able to prove what you've done, what you were responsible for, and also you're going to insist the inspector and or whoever the person is that does the investigation to assist you to address the situation. So with that, I think we've come to the end of this. Thank you very much for taking the time out to be here today. Byron, thank you for your assistance, as well as Steve. And from my side, thank you and goodbye.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this morning, and goodbye.